There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. Today, we are going to take a wild attempt at ranking the projects in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Now, I say projects and not movies because I am going to include a handful of the TV shows. The ones that are officially canon. There are some that we're still kind of on the fence about, like the Netflix Daredevil series. So I'm not going to toss that in there yet until we find out for sure if it's just they're using the same cast and not acknowledging the series, or if it's going to be, most of it counts and they're just going to make little tweaks here and there. So I've got it narrowed down to 33 items. And, I'll explain all that in a minute. But before we dive into that, I do want to update you guys on the Kickstarter. Yeah, we launched a new Kickstarter yesterday. I say we, it's myself and Dynamite, with an artist, Carlos Renault, and cover artists are Michael DePascal right there, as well as Stepan Sejic and Mirka Andolfo. Now, I'm blown away by how well this took off. This is the Stepan Sejic cover. We hit goal within the first 30 minutes, which is awesome. But it's been going now for a little over 24 hours, maybe about 26 hours. And as of the moment, we are over $16,000, getting up near $17,000 with over 325 backers. And we still have 29 more days to go. We haven't announced the stretch goals yet, which we're going to do very shortly. We are looking at doing a digital option, but we're still working out the details on that. So, I mean, I am really excited by this because this is a project that means a lot to me. There's a lot of personal stuff that I bring into this story, and even though it's not a story about me, it is my experiences as a photographer. Some of the things that I've been in do add to this particular story. But the bottom line is it's an erotic, romantic tale of boy meets girl and the whole, normal romantic storyline. But it's kind of a slice of life. It's in the same vein as Sunstone and Swing and books like that. Also, when I was writing it, there was this movie, I believe it was a Jeff Goldblum. No, it's not a Jeff Goldblum movie, but it was this movie when I was younger about this guy who ends up getting caught up with this crazy girl for one night and just has the time of his life. And I was thinking about that when the story was being put together. This very straight-laced guy being pulled into this very fast-paced, sensual world, and him just trying to navigate it and just being kind of blown away by it. So it's a fun story. There's a lot of very, like I said, it's a pretty sexy book, I got to tell you. So if that's your kind of thing, then check it out. Kyle can put the link in the chat for me. And you know, I'll keep you guys updated if we do anything really interesting with it, and hopefully you guys will want to join in. So, all right. Kyle wants me to interview myself for the thing, and I may do that one day just for the fun of it, but we'll work that out. We got, like I said, we got 29 more days to hype it, so we'll do some clever things. All right. We are going to now move on to, I hope you guys saw the Book of Boba Fett. The second part, the second chapter aired last night, and it was long. I was surprised. That was a good, 50 minutes worth of television. So after going very short in the first episode, they went much longer in this one. They brought in a lot of fun stuff, but we'll talk all about that tomorrow. We'll do our spoiler review. So if you haven't had a chance to watch Book of Boba Fett, watch it tonight, tomorrow morning, and then at this time tomorrow, we'll talk about it. We'll go into some of the cameos that pop up. Probably next week, I'll do a deep dive into one particular cameo that showed up. An interesting character that may end up being a big part of the series. That's a lot of money they spent on the outfit for him just to show up once. So I'm thinking a deep dive of that particular character may be in order. Kyle says he fell asleep during this one. Were you in a bacta tank? Were you having dreams when you were sleeping? So we'll talk about that tomorrow. But today we are going to rank the MCU. And when I sat down to do this, I realized it's not really fair to rank the projects in 1 to 33, because in a way, the 33rd one is still better than a lot of the stuff that's out there. And if you say, well, this is number 33, you're kind of saying, well, this is the worst thing in the MCU. And I don't know if anything necessarily deserves that title as the worst thing in the MCU. Is it not? I mean, and it's just I don't think any particular thing deserves to be called the best in the MCU. So what I did was I broke it down into 4 tiers. And tier 4 are the ones that they're entertaining, they're fun, but there's some problems with them. They may not be, the plot may not click as well as you want it to. There might be something off, something like that. And I'll talk about each one as I go through the tier. And then there's tier 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1, 2, with the top being the ones that anytime they're on, I have to watch. But I'd rewatch any of these. And I won't say that about a lot of movies, that the Zack Snyder's Justice League, I enjoyed watching it, but that is so long, and I don't know if I would watch it again. Just like I don't know if I'd watch The Watchmen again from him. I thought it was a great job for it. I mean, he did a good job with the movie, but where these, I think there's a rewatchability to all of them. So, all right. So we're going to start with tier 4, and there is 8 entries in tier 4. Now, these are not in any particular order. Like I said, they're just all on the 4th tier, and you could rank them within that if you wanted to. I'm not going to. I'm just going to, these are randomly on tier 4. And I'm going to start with a TV show. There's actually 3 TV shows in this tier and 5 movies. So Kyle says there is one thing that does deserve to be the worst. How recently did you review all of these MCU flicks? I tend to rewatch them a lot. When I get bored, I'll rewatch them. So I'd say I've rewatched most of these within the last 1.5 to 2 years. Some of these I've only watched once, but they came out in the last year and a half or so. But most of them I've watched multiple times. Actually, I think even the TV shows, I think I've watched everything multiple times. There maybe only be one on here. I mean, Eternals may be the only movie that I've only seen once so far. And that's just because I haven't had a chance to see it again. I will later this month. All right. So starting on tier 4, it's the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. And it hurts me to put this because I really liked the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I loved the character development of both Sam and Bucky. I loved the interaction between the two. I loved how they personalized all of it. And it was a matter of, it wasn't just passing the mantle. If it was simply passing the mantle, you know, Steve gave Sam the shield and that was the end of it, I don't know if I would have actually cared. I would have been like, whatever. But part of the classic hero's journey is the hero refusing the call. Now, Sam is already a hero. When Steve came to him for help with Natasha, he took him in immediately. He was willing to put on the wingsuit again and stand next to Steve in any fight he needed. He's a hero. But when it came time to step up to be Captain America, Sam refused that call. He decided to put the shield in a museum instead. The character development of him, the character development of... Will this be a multi-day review ranking? I'm going to try to get it all done in one day. I just got to move pretty quickly, I think. I think the character development of Bucky is amazing. Also, the introduction of the older Black Captain America. Damn it. Help me out, Kyle. The introduction of the older Black Captain America, whose name slips my mind real quick. That was handled really well, telling his story. The problem where this show hits, it has to be the bad guys. The Flag Smashers, Carly Morgenthau, they're just not compelling. The story is all over the place, and it's because of the pandemic. Because they tried to take the pandemic storyline out, it hurt this series. The bad guys just don't make that much sense. The introduction of John Walker was great. I thought Wyatt Russell did an amazing job. So everything else around it was really well done. The problem with the Falcon and the Winter Soldier are the bad guys, are the Flag Smashers, and the storyline that they tried to bail on. Baron Zemo is amazing in this. So that, and then the Sharon Carter reveal, I also feel was weak. I don't think it didn't really pay off how they wanted it to. So why Falcon and Winter Soldier is down here on tier 4 are the bad guys. It just didn't work. That's going to be the same one for the next thing on the list, which is Black Widow. Black Widow A should have come out in the time that it took place. It shouldn't be a look back. In doing so, you lose a lot of the urgency of the film. There's no, she's going to live through it. So as soon as you do that, you take away the importance of the film, the fact that she could actually die, any of that stuff. When you take that away, it brings the film down. But as much as I loved Scarlett Johansson's performance in it, I loved David Harbour and his Red Guardian performance. I didn't really warm that much to Florence Pugh as Yelena Belova, which is weird because I think she's absolutely great in Hawkeye. I didn't like her that much here. The weakness in this film are the villains. The way they totally ruined Taskmaster, one of the best villains in the Marvel Universe, and the whole guy running the Red Room, it doesn't work. The bad guys don't work in this film. And the whole falling from the sky fight thing, it's a neat visual, but the villains need to be reworked for a sense of urgency, for a sense of, that's where this movie falls apart. And as much as I liked a lot of the aspects of it, again, the villains were just too weak. Now, all right, going to move on. That's two. Also on the list, is not going to surprise anybody, Thor: The Dark World. Thor: The Dark World, it was a cursed movie from the beginning in a lot of ways. This is a movie Patty Jenkins was originally going to do, and then creative differences, she leaves. They bring in, I want to say Alan Smith, but that's too close to Smithy. Alan Taylor. They bring in this other director, and he comes on, and he comes from Game of Thrones, and you can see what he was trying to do was not the tone they ended up wanting. And I think they edited it into what we got, but I don't think it was shot that way. It's very dark. It's very lifeless. There's not a lot of humor, which is normal in the MCU. The villains are tragically underused. And, and again, it's a beautiful looking movie. But you waste waste Christopher Eccleston. You don't get the best performance out of Tom Hiddleston as Loki. There's some, like I said, some really good moments in it. But I think that Marvel was trying to make a different movie than the director was. And in doing so, it suffered for that reason. There is supposed to be a director's cut out there that is very different. And I'd be curious to see it because I'd just like to see what his original vision was. But I don't think we're ever going to get that. So, and like I said, I don't think anybody is surprised that Thor: The Dark World's on here. Another one on this list is Captain Marvel. But it's not on there for what a lot of people complain about, which is Brie Larson's acting. I think Brie Larson was fine. I think she was playing a character without her memories, without her personality. And I think what doesn't work in Captain Marvel is really, again, the villains. And a lot of the ones in this series, or in this tier, the villains don't click. Jan Rog, they're trying to do a bait and switch with the Skrulls. And maybe it's that as a comic fan, I'm so used to the Skrulls being the bad guy that when that change happens, it really throws us off. It's not what we expect, which normally is a great thing. I don't think it works here. I think that, and in doing so, again, you pull the rug out from under. You expect that Jude Law will end up being a heroic figure at the end, and because that's kind of the storyline, that he's the trainer and stuff. But when it flips, it just doesn't feel right, and everybody that she's supposed to be relying on betrays her. So yeah, that's where I have a problem with the movie. It has nothing to do with her. It has to do with the basic switching of the Krees and the Skrull, which, again, the Kree aren't necessarily great people either, but that's why Captain Marvel is on the fourth tier for me. Iron Man 3. is on the fourth tier, and it almost got off of it, I got to tell you. Iron Man 3 seemed very self-important. I liked it well enough, but it just felt like we spend the majority of the movie with Tony Stark and very little with Iron Man. There's this whole push for, I mean, the extremist thing is kind of a weird thing to define. I think if maybe we had a clear-cut villain, but Aldrich Killian and Extremis are kind of more of an idea than a villain, and it's basically AIM anyway. But they could have focused on that, but they brought in the Mandarin. And don't get me wrong, I think how they fixed the Mandarin problem with Shang-Chi is fantastic, and they couldn't have done that without Iron Man 3 being the way it is. But I just don't think there was a cohesive movie in there. They just kind of threw a bunch of stuff in there, and it's, in a ways, it's a lot of a mess. They could have trimmed a lot of the moments in there down, and it would have worked better. Did we need War Machine being turned into the Iron Patriot? Did we need the president being kidnapped? And I mean, there's a lot of different things going on in Iron Man 3, and they don't really push the movie forward very well. Also on the list is The Incredible Hulk. Now, overall, I like the Incredible Hulk movie. I don't think Ed Norton is great in it, but he's okay. I just don't think it sings. It doesn't have that. There are some really good beats in there, good moments, and I think it is still a good part of the MCU. But you really don't really care what's going on in a lot of ways. We get the cool fight scene at the end, and we get, like I said, those moments. We've never had the leader payoff, the Samuel Stern character payoff. We don't, they never bring back Betty, but we do get Ross, and we've gotten Emily Blonsky back. So, and I like the fact that they really started it off being more of a horror movie. And I think they do a really nice homage to the original television series. But it just isn't any agency to it. There's no, I think they spend so much time, again, on Banner that we really don't get a lot of the Hulk. And I think that's the problem. That they don't really embrace the Jekyll and Hyde aspect, which I think is something you should do when you're doing a Hulk movie. All right, the last two things on Tier 4 are both TV shows. The What If series is on here, and it's not saying the What If is bad. I thought What If was good. The problem is that the episodes were very uneven. You would have one like the Death of the Avengers, where Hank Pym kills everybody. Or, and then you'd have the zombie one, and then you'd have Party Thor, and then you'd go, into something like the Captain Carter one. So you'd have some that seem very action adventure-y, and then horror with the Doctor Strange and the zombies, and then lighthearted funny with Party Thor, and then much darker and deeper. I mean, it really was all over the place. And I get that it's an anthology, but since at the end they tried to make it something, and their plan is to bring some of those characters into the MCU, I think it could have used a stronger through line and a stronger tone. It just, like I said, it flies all over the place. You don't know what you're going to get. You come off of the Doctor Strange episode just feeling depressed as hell, and then, we got zombies, and then after zombies, we're going to get Party Thor. Great. It's just too uneven for me. JD, I agree with you that The Incredible Hulk might have been one of the most unique tones in the MCU, and I agree with you on that. And I think, again, none of these are bad movies in my opinion. It's just they've got some weaknesses that keep them a little lower than the others, But to me, I would rather watch anything on tier 4 than go back and rewatch the Green Lantern movie or Bloodshot. Or, there are other movies that they're not quite up to any of the Marvel stuff. So a bad Marvel movie is still better than a lot of other movies out there. I will take the Hulk over any of the Fast 9 movies or the Fast and the Furious movies any day of the week. So, even Calvin and Hobbes or whatever that was. And then final one on here, and this is only on here because Marvel considers it canon, and that's Agent Carter. Agent Carter was a good TV series. The first season was really good and strong, and if it was just the first season, it would have been a lot higher. The second season took a big tonal drop. I think what they did with the first season was amazing. What they did with the second season was really weak. So they're just, again, inconsistency between the two. And that's it. Iron Fist is not on the list. Daredevil, basically only things that are considered canon and have been announced as canon by Marvel will be on the list. So Iron Fist, Luke Cage, none of those are on there. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is not going to be on here. Only Agent Carter because Marvel has said it is canon, and that's because Marvel Studios made it. All right. We're going to move up to tier 3. How is Spider-Man 3 and all of Andrew Garfield not tier 4 since you have lower one? And again, I don't consider those MCU. So if you're talking about the Tobey Maguire and the Andrew Garfield movies, just because they've been kind of brought in, I'm not counting Venom and Morbius either. So we're focusing on the main MCU universe. They make them canon to the MCU as a whole, but it only makes them canon to the multiverse, not to the individual universe. So it's the Marvel Comics or Marvel Cinematic Universe. So that Tobey Maguire came to visit the MCU, but he's not actually in it. Yeah, if I'm starting to put those in, then I do need to put in the Daredevil series and stuff like that. It gets a little complicated. Right now, I'm just focusing on the actual MCU. We could come back and look at the subsidiary ones later. All right. Let's see. Let's go ahead and take our break now, and when we come back, we'll race through the rest of these. So, still figuring out my pacing. We'll be right back.
Imagine being at a convention and going to an interview panel that's just for you. No bustling crowds, no hours-long lines, just you, the moderator, and your favorite comic book creators. Well, this is pretty much that. Miss Jen sits down every week with 2 comic book creators for a live stream interview about their latest work, and you can ask them whatever you want. It's Talking Shop, Mondays at 5 Eastern on The Experience, Comic Culture and Sales.
All right, we're going to have to pick up the pace here. So let's start with Tier 3. Now, Tier 3, I'm going to start with the Eternals. I think the Eternals is... I like the Eternals. I haven't seen it a second time yet. I think it's very different. JD mentioned that he thought the Hulk was very tonally different. I think the Eternals is very tonally different. You don't necessarily have a bad guy. You just have different aspects, different opinions on things, and it brought people to blows. I think there's a lot of characters introduced there. The film may be a little too top heavy. Nope, Eternals is Tier 3. So I think that's maybe the problem. Maybe they put in a little too much into it, and it's a lot to take in. It's a big movie. It's a grand movie. It's very Dune-like or epic-like. I just think that tonally the difference puts it a little bit outside what you expect from an MCU movie. And the lack of a clear-cut villain. I mean, is your villain Icarus? Is your villain the Deviants? Is your villain the Celestials? And it gets even more complicated with the closing credits. They have a lot of stuff going on in this movie, and I think they could have trimmed it down. They didn't need to introduce Dane Whitman here. He was just superfluous in a lot of ways, but they introduced him anyway. So they could have made this a smaller movie, and instead they tried to go very big, and in doing so, I think it cost them. So that's why Eternals is here. Captain America Civil War makes this list, and it makes Tier 3 for one main reason. Because it's not really a movie. You know, there isn't a specific through line. There's better character development of Baron Zemo in Falcon and Winter Soldier than there is at any point in this movie. There is no character development. It's just them bringing everybody together for a big fight. There's a lot of talk about the Sokovia Accords, the fallout, but it just feels like it's not a movie. It's just part of the big picture. It's part of the whole. It's enjoyable. You want to watch it. But it isn't one that I go, oh, I want to rewatch that one tonight. Because, again, it just feels like if you're doing a rewatch of all of them, then you definitely want to watch it. But it's not one that you just want to sit down and watch. And even though it introduces Black Panther, it introduces Spider-Man, it brings all the heroes together. It's basically Avengers 2.5. There's not enough story of its own. There's not enough development. It's not really a Captain America movie. If it had been more about Cap, that would have worked. But I think it got too big, too crowded, serving too many masters, and that's why it's down here on Tier 3. Iron Man 2 also is down on... Oh, I forgot to mention that Iron Man... No, I did mention Iron Man 3 was in the other one. Iron Man 2 is here. And again, it's here. The big flaw for Iron Man 2 is the villains. I mean, Justin Hammer is a cool villain. Whiplash is all right. The problem is that they just don't really seem like a good threat. Tony Stark is more of the bad guy in this, what he's doing to himself. So that's why Iron Man 2 is here. And I love the Iron Man movies. So having one down on Tier 3 kind of sucks, but I still love the movies. You know, I still watch them and enjoy them. Spider-Man Homecoming is on this list here. And this is one of those cases where I think the villain is great, but it's a little too teen angst to me. It's a little too John Hughes for a superhero movie, which, again, that's what they were going for, and that's fine. I just don't know if it works for an MCU movie. So, again, that's why it's down here on Tier 3, where the other Spider-Man movies are much higher. Avengers Age of Ultron, that's down here as well. And the reason that's down here is I don't think Joss Whedon's heart was in this movie. I think he was going by the numbers. in a lot of ways. I don't think this was the movie he wanted to tell, and I think he was burnt out, and it comes across in the movie. Ultron should have been more menacing. James Spader is an amazing actor. To get him to be Ultron should have been fantastic, and he's good, but again, it's another one of those that just seems too convoluted. Yeah, I'm with you on that. The introduction of the Black Widow Bruce Banner love story didn't make any sense. It wasn't needed. The Scarlet Witch messing with everybody's minds, the weird dreams, Thor's dream thing. There was a lot of extra stuff in service of the MCU that weren't necessary. They should have just focused on telling a good Ultron story, and some trimming, stuff like that. This could move up easily, but the way it was released, it had some issues. Let's see. WandaVision's on the list here. And while WandaVision, I think, was awesome, I don't think it was... I think it kind of ran out of steam. They gave us this sitcom-driven thing, and then it shifted to being a show, and it kept doing the weird stuff, like, trying to do the sitcom-y stuff while trying to force in the MCU stuff, and it didn't blend as well as it went on in the series. Plus, they laid out a lot of clues that didn't pay off. I think bringing Evan Peters in was more of a distraction and took away from the show than it added anything to it. So where WandaVision, I think, was a great experiment and I enjoyed it, I think it could have been better. It could have been a little tighter, a little more focused. And, they brought in the gimmick and they tried to hang on to the gimmick as long as they could. But there are some amazing moments in the show. So let's not forget that. All right. I've got Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in this tier. Volume 1 sings to me. It's perfect. Volume 2, there's some moments that just don't work very well, and we didn't need to spend so much time with the Ravagers. The whole thing with Ego was kind of strange. Quill being part Celestial, or, I think James Gunn does a great job, but where he has to connect to the bigger MCU, he does it in a very, just waves his hand at the MCU and go, yeah, those are connected. They don't really connect solidly. So, and I'm not a huge fan of Peter Quill. There's a heroic point he needs to get to, and he doesn't. He's, it's hard to watch him. They want him to be Han Solo or Rick from the Mummy movies, and he's not quite that, because there isn't that heroic underside. It just isn't there for me. So that's why Volume 2, where, and even though I love the Yondu stuff, I love the other Ravager stuff, the movie feels a little bloated, and just, it could have used some editing and, again, some more focus. Let's see. And then the last one on this tier, I think I talked about all the other ones, is Ant-Man and the Wasp. I really like the first Ant-Man movie. I think the second one is good, but I think that they wanted to keep so much of the first movie that they didn't, that they forced things in. Keeping Lewis and his buddies. I love Michael Pena's character, David Dastmalchian, T.I., great. But they felt forced in. And again, you've already brought in Ghost and Bill Foster and all this other stuff. You could have left those behind, or at least just keep Michael Pena and drop the other two. There was ways they could have done it to tighten the movie up. but I think they wanted their cake and eat it too. So Lego Head Pena and those geeks need to beat it. Yeah. So, but I do like the way he recaps the story. So that's tier 3. We're going to move into tier 2. Now, these are the movies that, movies or TV series that I will gladly rewatch, that I think that they're strong on their own. They don't need to be part of a bigger whole to work. They stand alone on their own. The original Thor movie is in here for me. I am a big fan of the original Thor movie. I just like the epic fantasy approach to it. I like Kenneth Branagh's work on it. I think overall it's a solid movie. I think they could have done more with the Frost Giants. The only weakness I see is the Frost Giants didn't really feel menacing to me. And I know Loki is sort of the big bad for this, but I think the Frost Giants needed to be more than the Tracksuit Mafia to make this work. So that's my downside on Thor. Overall, though, I like it. I wish they hadn't have dyed Chris Hemsworth's eyebrows. Those are really freaky every time I see them. But other than that, I think it's a tight movie. I like it. Not quite top tier, but right there. Captain America: The First Avenger. Another solid movie. Honestly, I think it just lacks that pow factor. It just lacks that. I don't know. I don't know how to describe it on Captain America. I think it's a really good movie. I love the story. I think, though, that they spend so much time with Skinny Steve and setting all that up, which is great, that we don't get enough of Cap versus Red Skull. We don't get enough of Cap as the hero. And I think that's the weakness to it. And it's not a big weakness. I mean, if they would have added 10 minutes to the movie and it was more of Cap and Red Skull, or, more of Cap as the hero, I would have been fine with that. And I think that would have probably boosted it up. But it's right there. The original Avengers movie is great. There is some great stuff in it. It's just not... There's some conveniences they do that bug me a little bit. The end credit scene, which they throw in there with Thanos, feels like it's thrown in, and that Kevin Feige then spent the next phases trying to make it work. So I don't think they were planning enough for that. But overall, The Avengers, good movie. But again, you got a lot of characters there. You've got to fix Hulk. You've got to bring in Black Widow and Hawkeye. And that's my other problem, is that you have so many heroes that they literally took Hawkeye and put him on the bad guy's side for a while, just because they needed to balance it out a little bit. So I think it just could have been a little bit better. Guardians of the Galaxy. So good. Just love the music, love the way it's shot, everything about it. It's a fun movie to sit down and watch. Yep, the archer got the shaft. I don't really have a complaint about Guardians of the Galaxy. I just think that there wasn't enough. Having Thanos in the movie made Ronan seem weak. I think if they would have taken Thanos out, had him be a cameo, we didn't need to have James Brolin sitting in a chair. If Ronan was the big bad, and then we found out at the end that he had been working for Thanos, that might have worked better. But Ronan never really came across as much of a bad guy as he could have been. And I think that's where the Guardians is weaker. Had they taken the whole Thanos thing out of it and just focused on Ronan as the bad guy, gave him more urgency, maybe they didn't really need to have Nebula and all. I mean, he had a lot of henchmen and stuff. We could have just gotten more of Ronan. It could have been good. So, Ant-Man. Ant-Man is one of my favorites. I love it as an intro movie. The timing, the humor, to me, it's really good. My biggest problem with it has to do with, by this point, we're looking at the MCU going, oh, it's another bad guy with the exact same powers as the hero, so that's why the ending works. I think they could have gone a little more original on the ending, but overall, I think it's a smart movie. It's a fun movie. I like the heist aspect. I think they could have done a little more with the heist, but again, tier 2 movie, definitely would watch it any time. Thor Ragnarok is on this list at tier 2. And my only knock against Thor Ragnarok, it's a funny movie. It's an exciting movie. I have a lot of praise for Thor Ragnarok. My problem with it is it's not a Thor movie. This isn't Thor to me. Thor, the first Thor movie to me is Thor. It's the Walt Simonson Thor. It's the Jack Kirby Thor. This is a Taika Waititi Thor. And that's fine, and that's the direction they're going to go. But it's not the Thor that I wanted to see. So that's my knock against that one. Spider-Man Far From Home is on this one. And again, it's not there's no knocks against the movie. I think Mysterio is a great villain. I think the Skrull twist is unnecessary, but it's setting up for other things. I like the idea of him working with Nick Fury and Hill, and that gets taken away at the end. But it's still got a bit of that teen angst thing going on there, which again is the theme they're going for here, which is fine, but doesn't work for me as much. So that's why it's down here on tier 2. And finally, I put Hawkeye on this level. I really enjoyed the Hawkeye series. It is probably one of my favorite of the TV series. But there were some issues that, especially at the ending, that don't make a lot of sense. There's things about it when I think about it, like why the Tracksuit Mafia was looking for the watch, how the watch would actually expose Laura. I mean, there's some plot stuff that don't seem resolved, and that bugs me at this point. So where I will happily rewatch this movie, I love seeing Clint and Kate and Clint and everybody and Kate and Yelena and seeing Wilson Fisk back. That's all great. And I will watch this. This will be my new Christmas show. But those plot points are going to bug me, and that's what keeps it from being top tier. All right. We are getting to our top tier now. These are the movies that I think are as perfect as you can get on a movie. No movie is perfect. No movie is 100% perfect. So these are the 8 projects from Marvel that I think are as perfect as they get. All right. The original Iron Man movie. Jon Favreau just launching this out of the blue, tier C level character, B level character. This was not a household name. You took an actor on a comeback with Robert Downey Jr. You give it to the director of Swingers. You bring in the Big Lebowski as the bad guy. You get Gwyneth Paltrow from indie movies, and John, and you put this together, and it's amazing, and it launches this big universe, and it just was the perfect storm. I think it's one of the strongest movies we've had in a long time. It's just solid by itself, standalone, amazing movie. Captain America: Winter Soldier. I don't have a lot of movies on. Normally the ones I'm putting in this list stand alone. You don't need other movies. This movie is something special. This was the Russo brothers, who are known for doing comedy TV shows, comes in, and they basically turn everything up on its ear we get a 1970s style conspiracy theory movie in the MCU, and it just clicks on every cylinder. Cap is great. Bucky is great. Introducing Sam Wilson just works. Natasha is perfect. And this may be one of my favorite Scarlett Johansson or the use of Black Widow. She really works well in here. Nick Fury, there's got so many components going on. Brock Rumlow, Robert Redford is in this movie as Pierce. Just fantastic movie. One of the best from Marvel. I consider these two one movie because they really are. That's Avengers Infinity War and Endgame, also the Russo brothers. To me, this was the ultimate Avengers movie, but you have to watch them together. I think they're weaker on their own. I think Infinity War needs Endgame and Endgame needs Infinity War. What they did is just phenomenal to take all those characters, put them all together like that, give us this big, epic movie, huge battles. It is absolutely gorgeous and has heart, has those cheer moments. Come on. If you were in the theater the moment Cap got Thor's hammer, everybody cheered. Whether you were a lifelong comic fan or all you've seen is a handful of the movies, you were excited about that. When Iron Man, snapped his fingers saying, "I am Iron Man," it was a payoff of all those movies. So, yeah, I think it's a fantastic movie. I have Doctor Strange in the top tier. To me, it's one of the most solid, well-written Marvel movies. It introduces the character. It gives us a look into this whole new aspect of the MCU, and it gives us a villain. Caecilius is an okay villain. He's not a good villain. But when you get to Dormammu and you get this threat, and it's such a clever, unique use of a power to stop the bad guy. There's charm to it. Benedict Wong is great in it Wong, Doctor Strange. It just really is one of my favorites. It's probably the most I rewatch. It is the first one I think about rewatching because I think it's the most solid standalone Marvel movie out there. Right behind that is Black Panther. Black Panther is another one that I think is a fantastic standalone movie. You don't have to watch anything else in the Marvel Universe, and you can love Black Panther. This is a strong character, an amazing performance by Chadwick Boseman. It really just clicks. It introduces us another whole new world. And again, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, Black Panther are probably my three favorite origin movies in the MCU. And the fourth one that is on tier is Shang-Chi. That's another one that I think is up there. Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. The bad guy is good. It's connected. It's personal. It introduces new worlds to us. It gives us heart and hope and humor and all the things you want in a movie. And to me, those are the four strongest origin stories. I love Captain America, the First Avenger. It's not that far below that. I love the first Thor movie. But these four, as the first for a character, I think are the strongest. And if you are bringing anybody into the MCU fresh, they've never seen anyone before, you can bring them in from any of those movies and you're going to get them hooked. So, and then my final thing on the top tier, and it's the only TV series that makes this list at the top tier, and that is Loki. And Loki defied all expectations. You've taken a villain, you've turned him into an anti-hero, you brought in Owen Wilson to the MCU. You've told one of the most confusing, timey-wimey stories you can, and it's brilliant. It really is. You go through those 6 episodes and you're dealing with all these big concepts, but you follow along. It keeps you going. You care. You hope Loki hooks up with female Loki at one point. It's a little strange, but it all clicks together. And I think it is the most solid of any of the TV series. All of the TV series have a weakness one way or the other. To me, Loki is the strongest. And and it's also the only one to guarantee a second season, too. They knew they were doing a second season when the first one ended. So yeah, those are my tiers. Those are, to me, tier 1, Iron Man, Captain America, Winter Soldier, Avengers, Infinity War and Endgame, Doctor Strange, Black Panther, Spider-Man No Way Home. Oh, that's the other one. I forgot to mention Spider-Man No Way Home. That is just a fantastic movie. It breaks all the rules. It connects to movies that don't exist in the MCU. It has got heart. It's got story. I think anybody who's a Spider-Man fan can sit down and love that movie. So Spider-Man No Way Home is the other one on the tier. So that should be all of the MCU projects that have come out so far. Again, the list will change. Kyle says, I disagree, but it's certainly tier 2 and 3 with tier 1 potential on Spider-Man. Right. And that's the thing, is that you can disagree with any of these. Everybody's going to have their personal favorites. They're going to like this one more, dislike that one more. This is my list. You guys can make your own lists, and you can put them in the comments below if you're on YouTube or wherever. And that's it. That is all 33 projects ranked into 4 tiers. That's the show for today. Come back tomorrow, and we will talk about Book of Boba Fett Episode 2. Stick around for Rex and John and Comic Collectibles. They got some really neat books coming up, including a Rob Liefeld cover of a Wolverine book with signed by Walt Simonson and Louise Simonson. And there's also a Ben Percy Wolverine book. So there's some really good stuff coming up. Stick around for that. I will see you guys tomorrow. Remember to check out the Kickstarter if you get a chance. I'd appreciate it. Have a good night, everybody.